over the last 4 weeks, I was talking about anxiety and how we can understand and cope with it through mindfulness. And I did mention at the last session that breathing techniques are also very, very helpful in coping with anxiety. So I thought that tonight it would be good to cover some of these and explain why our breath is such a powerful ally in helping us calm ourselves down. So we have two separate systems in our body, and our nervous system, two separate nervous systems in our body. They are not separate, but they are interlinked. One is called the parasympathetic nervous system, which helps calm us down, and the other, which is the sympathetic nervous system, which excites us. So whenever we face a threat, then it's our sympathetic nervous system that is stimulated, and cortisol, adrenaline are released by our brain into our body, causing our heart to pump faster, causing our blood vessels to constrict, causing our breathing rate to go up so that we're ready for action, whether we are going to fight off the threat or to run away from it. When the threat is over, then the parasympathetic nervous system comes into play. It starts to tell our body, our brain, to signal to our brain, oh, everything's fine now, so you can calm down. Then what happens is that our heart rate starts to slow down, we breathe more calmly, and things go back to normal. And how do we influence this parasympathetic nervous system to help us calm down? Is through our vagus nerve. And our vagus nerve is very closely connected with our diaphragm. Diaphragm is this muscle, this kind of like muscle between our stomach and our kind of our chest, lung. And what it does is that when it flattens, air comes in, and when it relaxes, then we push the air out again. So that action actually stimulates the vagus nerve, which in turn stimulates the relaxation response. So one of the important things to realize is that that is a very, very effective way of calming ourselves down. And we can do it consciously, but we have to know how to do it. So we have to learn to breathe using our diaphragm rather than our chest. Because when we breathe through our chest, we're actually going the other way. We're trying to excite ourselves. And that may be helpful in certain circumstances. If you're feeling tired or sleepy and you suddenly want a slight burst of energy, then you can learn to kind of influence your body in that way, like taking, quick breaths. So the other thing about breathing is that most of us, in fact the vast majority of us, don't breathe in a very effective or efficient way. We breathe shallow, and we breathe too fast, between 15 to 20 times a minute. And we tend to, like this, okay? I'm exaggerating, of course, but it's not the deep breathing which is more effective. So diaphragm breathing also helps us to do this. It helps us to use as much of our lungs as possible. So the first exercise that I like to show you is actually to feel what it's like to use our diaphragm to breathe. So I'd like to invite you to sit comfortably and put one hand on your chest at about your heart level, and the other hand down by your belly button, your navel. So they can feel it when one or the other moves. And as you breathe in, allow your breath to travel all the way down to your lower belly. So it's like putting air into a balloon. Your balloon will expand. Then when you just let the nozzle, open the nozzle, the balloon will contract by itself and all the air will come out. So it's the same thing that happens with our diaphragm. So here we go. And I'll count, breathing in, out. You should feel your lower belly moving. Breathing in, out, in. So if you're feeling your chest moving out, then you're not breathing deeply enough. In, out. You can use your muscle to push your lower belly out a bit if you want to. Breathing in, breathing in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out. So you can feel your breath. And this is how we breathe when we want to stimulate our relaxation response. That means we want to relax. But what I was doing was breathing still fairly quickly. So we're going to try and slow it down. But what is our usual way of breathing is this quick breathing, which keeps our kind of sympathetic nervous system kind of stimulated all the time. And what it does over the long term is that it makes us more anxious generally. You know, our circulation is not as good. Sometimes we have tightness in our muscles and many other symptoms when we are not actually breathing properly, you know, because what we're doing is that we're actually telling our body, there's some threat. Maybe it's low-level threat, but there's still some low threat all the time. And to keep your body kind of stressed or in this kind of fight or flight mode for a long time is, over the long term, pretty damaging. So what we need to do is learn how to use our diaphragm to help us breathe more slowly, more deeply, so that we don't have to breathe as fast. If we're breathing more slowly and more deeply, we can actually slow our breathing down and everything relaxes. You know, that's the key thing. Breath is actually one of the superpowers we have. Mindfulness practice, meditation practice is the other. So the diaphragm is actually connected very much to all this breathing practice. So just remember that if we want to relax, we have to engage our diaphragm to breathe. Now, the second one I want to show you is very, very effective, very powerful for helping with anxiety, to calm you down, and it might even make you very relaxed. So we're going to do 4 cycles only, and it's called the 4-7-8 breathing. And this is developed by a man called Dr. Andrew Weil. He's actually a medical doctor, and he found this very helpful in helping treat his patients with panic disorders and anxiety disorders, when they're experiencing this sudden moment of anxiety or panic, this kind of breathing does help. But as with all things, we need to practice. Like you have to practice it regularly. You can't expect to just turn it on and turn it off just like that. I remember one of my teacher's students saying that, he was trying to do this mantra practice, Kwansam Bosal, and he was trying to do it as regularly as he could. Maybe it's not as well as he should have done, because one time he was taking a flight from one city to another, and the plane encountered an emergency. I think one of the engines cut out, and the pilot said, well, you have to do a emergency landing. And everybody was, really scared. And he also was very scared. And then at that time, he couldn't think of the mantra. He couldn't remember it. He was in such a panicked state that he couldn't remember the mantra. Can you imagine that? Kwansam Bosal, 4 syllables, and he couldn't remember. And he was like so scared until the plane landed safely. Of course it did, because he lived to tell the tale. But that is what practice gets us. Like Bruce Lee said, you don't rise to when you're in crisis, you don't rise to your expectations, but you fall to the level of your training. So if we want to be able to use this, then please practice it regularly. Then suddenly when you need it, you can just call on it. So this 4-7-8 breathing means breathing in to a count of 4, hold to a count of 7, and breathing out with a very with a whoosh sound to a count of 8. So I'll show you just a couple of times what it looks like, then we'll do it together. Okay, so that was breathing in 4, hold for 7, breathe out 8. So let's try it. I'll just count you through. In 2, 3, 4, hold 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In 2, 3, 4, hold 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In 2, 3, 4, hold 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In 2, 3, 4, hold 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, return to normal breathing. So his recommendation is just to do 4 cycles. Okay, you can do it anytime you want, and you can repeat each cycle, each of the 4, more than once a day, but at each time, if you're beginning, just do 4, and that's it. And as you get more accustomed to it, then you can do more cycles. But that's his recommendation, and I would follow it because he has a lot of experience in teaching this. And in his experience of treating people with this clinical condition of anxiety and panic disorder, he finds that it is very, very effective. So I hope that you will find that useful too. The final thing I want to share with you, and thank you for staying with me for all this time through our interruptions, is what we call coherent breathing. Now this was actually discovered quite a long time ago, in that the ancient yogic chants and the spiritual chants actually follow this kind of rhythm of breathing, which is breathing 5 to 6 times per minute. That means between 5 to 12 seconds for each breath cycle, in and out, 5 to 10, 12 seconds. So what they found was when people practice in this way, it actually makes the whole body coherent. That means integrated, your heart and your mind. So what it does is that when we do this practice, the research finds that you get more energy, your pain level goes down, you have reduced blood pressure, and your ability to handle anxiety, fear, and also cope with depression also improves. So there's a lot of actual benefits of breathing in this way, breathing slowly basically, 5 to 6 times per minute. So what does it feel like? Let's try it. So just count. I will count through, and maybe it might be a bit too slow for you, but let's just do it for 1 minute and then see how you feel. If you find it's too slow, then maybe you can shorten it and do perhaps more times, like 8 to 9 times a minute. And then as you get used to it, you can start to develop your breath skills. But anybody can do it, okay? Because I learned how to do it through meditation. I wasn't aware of this, but when you sit down and do a lot of meditation, your breath starts to slow down naturally, because during retreats, we're doing like between 8 to 10 hours of intensive meditation every day for 3 months. So, okay, here we go. Sit relaxed. Close your eyes if you want. Just follow my voice, and this will just be for a minute. So empty all your lungs out. And remember, we're using a diaphragm to breathe. So breathing in, 2, 3. Out. In. Out. In. Out. In. Out. In. Out. In. Out. Last time. In. Out. Okay, breathe normally. So if you're following my rhythm, you're breathing around six-ish times a minute. How did it feel for you? Was it uncomfortable? Maybe if it is, then start with a shorter interval and build up. But it really does help. I find that I naturally notice when I'm starting to get anxious about something, my breathing gets shallower, and I kind of fairly well tuned into this. And when I notice it, then I consciously start to breathe more slowly and more deeply. And then after a while, the sense of unease or anxiety starts to go away. So it is very helpful. It definitely has worked for me, and I hope that it can work for you. But please do remember that it requires practice. You can't just try to remember it, because like that my fellow student on that plane where the engine cut out, But if you haven't practiced it enough, you won't remember it. So, again, I'm sorry about the live feed having problems tonight. Hopefully this has gone on okay, and I'll try and see what happened, but it probably is a result of the instability in our unified network. So thank you all very much for watching, and hope you'll join us again next week for more Zen practice. And if there's anything that you'd like to discuss, any questions you have about life practice or anything, please do ask, and I'll be very happy to try to address them. So thank you, and stay well, stay healthy, and stay safe.